There are few better feelings in life than avoiding a traffic jam or when all those traffic lights ahead of you suddenly go green and the road is open. President Trump today had the swagger and the smile of someone who just escaped what he believes was a traffic jam in the courts. A landmark Supreme Court ruling by the Supreme Court surrendered some of the judicial branch's own power, making it more difficult for judges to issue nationwide halts to presidential orders that could be considered unconstitutional. An exhaustive 119-page ruling was followed by an exhaustive news conference with the president touting his victory and his new open road.
It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn.
Critics fear the court has now unleashed the administration to overreach and potentially destabilize the balance of power. In her dissent in the 6-3 ruling, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warned with the stroke of a pen, the president has made a solemn mockery of our Constitution. Rather than stand firm, the court gives way. Trump has a green light, and he believes he has a mandate to now speed ahead. We begin tonight with CBS News' chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, who's here. Jan, it's a lot to unpack and a pretty dense ruling. What did it decide, and what did you make of it?
Well, you know, the issue of nationwide injunctions has really come on the scene only in the last 10 years, and they have just exploded, stymieing presidents from both parties. President Obama, didn't like them. President Biden urged the Supreme Court to do what they did today because what would happen is Republicans would file lawsuits in conservative states like Texas and get nationwide injunctions that would block, say, President Biden's immigration policies, efforts to impose vaccine mandates, efforts to give student debt relief for borrowers. So Biden didn't like them, presidents don't like them, and then Trump, in his kind of jubilant press briefing today, took credit for being the president that finally got nationwide injunctions scaled back substantially. Obviously, courts can still issue nationwide injunctions. I think this decision will have no real practical impact on the underlying issue of birthright citizenship. I've spoken already with immigrants' rights groups. They have already filed lawsuits as class actions. And that's what Justice Amy Coney Barrett suggested in her majority opinion, as did other justices during the argument, that that's just the right vehicle. Like, judges can still enter nationwide injunctions, but a lot of judges are entering them way too often. And so we're going to say, go do it as a class action, which the rules specifically allow. And you can have class actions in those cases. And this case seems uniquely situated for a class action. So I think the immigrants' rights groups knew this was coming. They filed these lawsuits within, hours of the court's ruling, and they are confident that this executive order will never be implemented.
In that case, assuming that these class action lawsuits have the effect they're desired to have, where does the battle over birthright citizenship go from here?
This, as you know, was obviously not about the merits of birthright citizenship. And Trump has lost that argument at every turn in the lower courts. It's blatantly unconstitutional. Judge after judge after judge has ruled. So what we have now is that it's going to stay blocked. There's a 30-day pause in the executive order before the states would even start to begin implementing it. It's not going to be that long before another judge in, say, Maryland, where one's already been filed, will certify a class, say that these people have common issues. They're uniquely situated to go proceed together. Perhaps all pregnant women who are here illegally, and that would encompass do the same thing as this, one judge just extending his ruling nationwide in a different way. This is an important case for legal process. I think practically speaking, it may not really change the fact of birthright citizenship is going to stay blocked. But why Trump was so jubilant today, I think, was because this will help him clear the way for some of these other rulings that lower court judges have also issued nationwide injunctions for, other executive orders that aren't as clearly unconstitutional. I mean, some of these judges have overstepped their bounds. We have seen some of these nationwide injunctions be reversed or be set aside. And so I think that's where the White House, you could tell, they didn't really want to talk about birthright citizenship, but that's where they were keeping their focus. It's a green light to do some of these other executive orders.
Great work today and great work all term.
Oh, thank you. Last day, I know. It's like Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Let's got through it, I guess.
Feels like a real Friday, doesn't it?
I know. It's a bit of a hugely significant term. There were a ton of important rulings today. They always save the difficult ones for the end, and this term was certainly no exception.
Jan Crawford, thank you very much. Let me bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree to give us some analysis here. Tom, I want to talk a bit about this other case, this case out of Maryland on LGBT lessons. Give me an idea here, what you think the takeaway is from that case and the implications of that case.
Sure, Scott, this was a very important case, but probably the least surprising outcome of the term. We could tell from the argument that the justices were inclined to side with the parents in this dispute, which basically concerned whether or not the parents had a right to opt their children out, their elementary school-age children out of courses or classes or lessons that involved LGBT-themed books and materials. And the Supreme Court, during argument, sent a strong signal that they were probably going to side with the parents, that they respect the right of parents to instill the religious and moral values in their children, to control their education. And the judges, frankly, thought that the Montgomery County school system may have just, acted a little mistakenly in declining to give the parents a right to opt their kids out. The justices said it wouldn't have been much trouble just to let the parents take the kids out of the class. Why couldn't you have done it? And today the justices basically said the school board or the school district went wrong in not allowing it.
Yeah, Tom, the dissent was really striking in this case from Justice Sotomayor. And I'll add that this very thick ruling had images of some of the books in question, including the pages about same-sex marriage, gender dysphoria, which may have had some effect on the justices. But the dissent from Sotomayor says, what are schools to do if a parent wants to opt out because they don't want their children to learn about a female scientist or evolution or something that's politically against their political values? Does this put a burden on schools moving forward?
I think it does put a burden on schools. Look, I think Justice Sotomayor's dissent made a reasonable point, which is to say, if you are going to allow parents to opt their kids out of these types of lessons, where does it end? To your question, you could identify a whole host of areas, maybe some science materials, maybe some history materials, where the parents say the lessons in those materials are contrary to the values I'm trying to instill in my children, so I want to opt my kids out. So it absolutely could have the effect of really increasing the administrative burden on schools to give parents notice when controversial material might be presented and to set up a system in which the parents would be allowed to opt their kids out of any of those classes. So I think Justice Sotomayor has a fair point. Certainly, if this decision is read broadly to encompass all sorts of controversial materials, it could make life more challenging for school districts.
Tom, as Jan just said, it is a moment to exhale with a Supreme Court session ending for the year. What's your view of this session this year in the U.S. Supreme Court? What's the big takeaway?
I think the big takeaway is we saw a lot of cases that really involved the powers that are vested in the different branches of our federal government. I think that was clearest in today's momentous decision on the nationwide injunctions, where in that case, as in many cases this term, the Supreme Court was really policing the boundaries between the power of the executive branch, the power of the president to act, to execute the laws of the United States, vis-a-vis the powers of the other branches, the power of Congress to enact spending requirements, the power of the purse, and also the power of the judiciary to stop the president or to stop Congress when those branches overstep their bounds. I think the decisions the court made today may have significant and will have significant practical impact in the particular dispute, such as birthright citizenship. But I think their long-term effect will be more enduring because what the court did this term was in many key respects really reset the balance between the powers that the president can enact, that can execute, versus the powers of the courts and the powers of the Congress.
Tom Dupree, good to see you again. Have a good weekend.
Great to see you, Scott. Thanks so much.